Guess what? It's time for another pre-hard mode weapon review, and I have to say, today's pick is a little different to the norm, with its function not really being anything remarkable. However, what really intrigued me about this weapon is not only its incredibly high base damage for pre-boss, but also its potential near instant obtainability, giving melee players something to aim for when they first start their playthrough. Oh, of course I'm talking about the Purple Clubberfish. Aside from its ridiculous premise of just being a fish you swing around, perhaps it unironically finds itself as the ultimate early true melee weapon. Or it's just a fish. Before we see if this is the case though, just wanted to say that there's an absolutely massive sale happening at the Terraria shop, just for the weekend, with up to 40% off some epic merch, plus another 15% by using code SOCK at checkout, so don't miss out. Okay, let's see how you obtain it. Similar to a handful of other damage-dealing fish weapons in the game, we of course need to fish it up ourselves from bodies of water, which luckily for us, has near to no entry ceiling, allowing you to technically obtain it just with some wood and a bug net. However though, with the clubberfish being exclusively caught in the corruption, my biggest struggle was actually finding a pool big enough, well, at least on the surface, so you may have to delve underground to find a suitable spot, which if I'm honest, would be the main barrier into obtaining this thing, as navigating this biome early on is very tricky, but I guess if you're super careful about it, I'm sure you'll get yourself situated. And with that, here comes the next part of the puzzle, actually fishing the damn thing up. You see, while the clubberfish doesn't appear as too rare, with it having a 1 in 10 chance of appearing at 100 fishing power, the reality is that your fishing power is probably going to be at the bare minimum, which makes it a 1 in God knows what. So if you are struggling getting it this way, I suppose you could always complete a few angler quests, which are mostly risk-free, and get yourself some better bait, potions, and accessories to make it super easy to get. And with my clubberfish in hand a few minutes later, let's see what it can do for you this early on. Now, starting with the main attraction of this weapon, we're given a whopping base damage of 35, which compared to any other melee weapon you could feasibly obtain on day 1, puts you miles ahead of the competition, even with its slower attack speed. So going forward, we're only going to be comparing this thing to other optional melee weapons you can obtain early, as the investment of time taken seems to be the fairest comparison. And already, we're beating the Bat, a rare drop from underground enemies that you might not even see in a full playthrough. So what about the Blade of Grass, a weapon which if you play well, can be obtained on day 2 or 3. And yeah, as you can see, its damage is about matching that of the Clubberfish, which really goes to show just how ahead of the power curve this weapon really is. The only thing that will have you beaten is the recently reviewed Storm Spear, which as you know though, is unbelievably harder to obtain, requiring some serious risk versus reward and luck. So now knowing the clubberfish outputs great damage for how easy it is to obtain, what's it like with dealing with multiple enemies at a time? And well, to be expected by a true melee weapon, the results are pretty flat. At least it does match the range of larger swords like the Blade of Grass though, allowing you to keep a bit more distance against your foes. Oh, and speaking of distance, against the real thing, we get to see another fantastic perk the clubberfish comes with. Way above average knockback, which beats the Bat, Blade of Grass, and Storm Spear in terms of this stat. Of course though, killing speed is another thing completely, with it finding itself smack bang in the middle of these later obtainable weapons, which all things considered, really isn't bad at all. But I think it's about time we address what you're all probably thinking right now. Unless you're purposely challenging yourself, a non-projectile melee weapon is not going to be killing any bosses for you, with even the King Slime fight being extremely difficult due to the limited range of true melee. This really leads me on to the question of why you would want to hang on to such thing, and really, it's hard to say, as if I were you, I'd instead head to your ice biome and get a ice blade instead, as despite its lower damage, that projectile is going to be an absolute game changer. Also, if we are talking about early fishing here, for the love of God just fish in your ice biome and get some daggerfish instead, as holy these things are good, and will probably get you up to Skeletron in terms of boss kills. So I guess what I have taken from this is, yes, the clubberfish is a really effective true melee weapon for the early game, and will allow you to completely skip the ore sword tree, but as a subclass in general, unless you're strictly restricting yourself to just the melee class, I see no reason not to instead go for more versatile ranged or magic weapons, as this will just make your whole experience so much nicer. I don't know. Let me know down below if you beeline the clubberfish when starting your games, or is it simply just another obscure fishing weapon nobody ever uses? This has been sockrteez, and I'll see you in the next one.